Hey y'all, my name is Penny. Welcome to my channel. Today I am going to be doing something a little weird. I'm going to be changing my snare drum head first of all, but I'm also going to add rubber gaskets to this snare drum that I have here. We're going to talk about what snare drum it is in a second. Let me show you one of them. So this gasket is going to go on the butt for the snares. I've upgraded the strainer to the Atlas, and that has like built in these really cool little rubber fittings that are just fit perfectly. So that's all set. So we've got a gasket for the butt plate, and then I've got these gaskets. They're like a little bit of a rubber material. I don't know if you can see that. A lot of people hate these because they muffle the shell a little bit. So this snare drum, I'm gonna tap it for you. My head is like really cratered, and it's been a while since I've let a head go this long before changing it. It's kind of fun. So I'm going to show you the head. I'm going to tap on the drum for you so you can see how it sounds now. I will play you some before footage and then some after footage so you can decide for yourself whether this chokes the drum or not. I think, I've never done this exact experiment, so I don't know. So we'll see. Definitely I would consider the standard narrative is that it does in fact choke the drum. I want the drum to be a little muffled. So let me tap it first, because then I can tell you about it. Hear that flappy bounce at the end? Wow, hey, that's really a dead snare head. Like I say, it's been a long time since I have let a head go this far. And I'm going to use a different snare stand to do this, just so I can have it hopefully a little bit higher. I'm just changing the top head, but I'm going to have to take the snare drum totally apart because I need to take the lugs off to get the gaskets under the lug. That's how that works. So let me start by taking the snare head off, and I will show you that. So let's talk about what snare this is while I'm doing this. This is a Rocker Bronze 5x14. I think they sold it as a 5. They may have sold it as a 5.5, although I don't think so. This measures 5.375, I believe it is. I have it written down somewhere, so I will plaster it over my face if I got it wrong. But so it's a little bit deeper than a 5-inch, but not close to a 6 or a 6.5. So it still provides like a nice tight crack kind of sound, which, talk to me next week and it'll be different, but right this second, that's the sound I'm looking for from my snare drum. So from my main snare. So that's what snare this is. So it's bronze shell. Ludwig released these as kind of like a mid-priced bronze drum in the mid-aughts, maybe around 2010-ish, give or take a couple of years. I stopped paying attention to drum gear for a little while because my life got complicated. And my life is, I think my life is less complicated than it was, maybe, because I'm back paying attention to drum gear in a nerdy way. But so So, because if I had been aware of this drum when it came out, I probably would have bought one when they were out. I didn't. This is a used one that I have added die-cast hoops to. I really love die-cast hoops. They, I played die-cast hoops in drum corps. I'm like a broken record about drum corps. I apologize. But I grew up playing die-cast hoops. They weren't always on my drum set snare drums when I was a kid, but as an adult, I have definitely gravitated toward them. I just really, that rim shot, right? I really want to hear that crack. And then the cross stick sound, for me at least, is unbeatable with the die cast. So there's that. Okay, so are you ready for this hilarious head? Because it's hilarious. All right. So I don't know if you can see that. Woo! Look at that. That's a well-loved Baron. That is. The funny thing is, so it's been like this for a few days, and for some of this stuff that I've been doing, it's actually, Penny, hitting the center, Penny. For some of the stuff I've been doing, it's lost a little bit of its tone, right? As you would imagine. For some of the stuff I've been doing, it's actually been the sound I've wanted. So there you go. It's almost like, that the big fat snare drum thing that you just throw on top of your head. It's almost sounded like that just on its own. So this is my first Baron that I've worn through. Thank you, Attack Drum Heads. So I'm going to talk a teeny bit more, and then I'm going to do like a speed through. So this is a bronze shell. I'm not sure if it's imported. Would it say somewhere? I'm sure somebody would know. But Ludwig's top of the line metal snare drums are lovely, but they're very expensive, and especially for the sound I want, I think I can get the sound I want at a cheaper price point. So this drum is like perfect for me. Like I say, if I had been aware of it when it was out, I totally would have had one then. I have one now. It's been my main snare since I've gotten it. Every once in a while I think of throwing my limited edition Avadire Maple. So that was the snare drum that was out, I guess in 2019, on the kit instead of this. And I haven't yet stayed with this. It's a little on the ringy side for me, just a little, but I love the tone of bronze, right? So I'm trying to do some stuff to control the ring without muffling the head. I don't like muffled heads in terms of like adding something that's off center. So and I don't like, the Baron is a magical head, and the Logic Dot too, right? Because they have this incredibly tiny little special ring that is the only ring at the edge, either built in or laid on top, that I've ever heard that I've liked. So the Baron and the Logic Dot are an exception to this rule. But in general, I don't like crap on the head. I want to get the sound I want by tuning and by stuff that I can do to mess with the drum in other ways. And these gaskets are one of those ways. Another way, and this is a little bit has to do with snare sympathetic resonance and buzz from the toms. I'm using these Fat Cat spread wires, and these really provide some resistance to that sympathetic ringing problem that you get. They're fascinating and amazing. When you put them on, it's like, whoa. There'll be a link to those in the description. to the video, I'll leave you a link for attack heads too and Ludwig drums. So I think with that, I'm just gonna work. Okay, so I have all the lugs on the shell with the gaskets. Something else I do, I was realizing it's kind of funny because I'm eliminating metal to metal contact here, though I do still use the metal washer on the tension rod, although on the snare drums I usually like to double washers. So I have the metal washer that comes on the tension rod, and then a nylon washer as well. There are those washers that like they have like a little sleeve that protrudes down, and then you slide them in, and so those really prevent any metal to metal contact. Two things. First of all, eliminating metal to metal contact at the tension rod is kind of designed to increase resonance, which is the opposite of what I'm trying to do. But also, I've found those obnoxious. If you want to take they get stuck, right? Or at least they did for me. So if you want to take your tension rods out of your head, of your hoop ever, you have to take each one off separately, and it's like a struggle because they fit tight. So I don't dig that. I don't think I did this when I put the bottom head on. So I'm going to throw on some of this stuff. This is Finish Line Dry Bike Lubricant. It's a dry Teflon lubricant. It doesn't. I think I probably did put it on when I got the drum and when I put the heads on, and I can't see any of it. So you just put a little. I just run it so I can almost see it. I don't want it to drip, and then I just start them finger tight. Okay, so let's take 2 seconds to talk about tuning. I'll talk a little bit more as I go. I used to crank my bottom snare head to the moon, right? Like I used to just crank it and crank it and crank it until I was afraid it was gonna snap. This was a leftover habit from drum corps, where we used to use ratchet drum keys and we would tighten the heads. I am old, and so this was like before Kevlar heads and before metal bearing edges. And bottom snare heads I've definitely seen pop out of the channel, or the hoop, or just snap and like almost shatter. It's kind of impressive and scary. So I used to do that. That was a holdover. I watched a video by the fine folks over at Sounds Like a Drum, and they went through what happens when you crank your head up. And I was amazed at how cranking the head up actually activated a lot of like funky overtones. And I don't think I ever would have pieced that together had I not like specifically watched their video where they were like just going through, okay, what happens when you crank up the snare? And their videos are so well produced. So you just get a really good sense of what the sound actually is. So since then, I have modulated my my snare sound, my snare side tension quite a bit. I would say at this point I go for like a medium tension. And I have a drum dial, but I'll use it to like double check things. I tend to tune by ear first. When I first got the attack heads a few months ago, I tuned the drums by ear and then used the TuneBot to double check. The TuneBot, if you don't know, it's almost like a guitar tuner for drummers, right? You clip it on the hoop and it tells you the hertz, the pitch of each tension rod. And I am fairly laid back about the tuning of my drums. And I mean, I want my drums to sound good, and I feel like I have a good sense of tuning nowadays. But I know people who get crazy obsessive about it, and drum tuning isn't one of those things that I get crazy obsessive about. Especially because I have so many toms, if they sound like good as like a tone row as a family, I tend not to sweat it too much. Same thing with the snare drum. If it sounds like I want it to sound, I'm not gonna, if one lug is tuned a little bit different, but the drum sounds good to me, yeah, okay. Right, it just is. But another thing I wanted to mention, I also started using a medium weight snare head. So this is the 5 mil. I don't know why I did this. This might have been another Sounds Like a Drum video, actually. I know that Eric Singer played a part. His signature attack snare side head is a 5 mil, and then the attack medium snare side is also a 5 mil. So this is pretty much the heaviest snare side any of the companies offer. Other companies offer this weight, but I don't think anyone offers a heavier snare side, which if you went to the next heavier grade of head at that point, that's like a 7 mil. So that's like a resonant tom head. And then that would be super heavy for the snares. The conventional wisdom is a thinner head is more sensitive for the bottom side of the snares. And I think this is one of those times where it's technically true, but it being technically true doesn't mean it's actually useful. I found that when I switched to the medium head, the snare drum suddenly had a much more mature sound. Thicker without being tubby, full without being like overwhelmed. It's tough to put drum sounds into words, right? But I am a convert at this point. Some of my snares still have, mediums and thins for different sounds, but my main snare, my snare of the day, kind of my daily driver snare, is going to have a 5 mil probably for the rest of my life, right? One thing I didn't say when I was talking about adding the gaskets to muffle the shell a little bit, I've even considered hammering the shell, which is a thing, they hammer snare shells. I'm a little worried about it just because it's not a terribly expensive drum, but they don't make this drum anymore. And on the used market, they are actually, if anything, I think they cost more than they did new, because they're a really cool drum. And so I don't want to mess it up. But there are some videos on YouTube you can check out of people hammering snare drums, and the tone change is wild. The pitch gets lower, the overtones get like more chaotic, but also shorter, right? So the drum just dries out a little bit, still has that, metal sound, but not quite so ringy, pingy, right? So, and that's what I'm looking for. We'll see. That's in the back of my mind. Well, let's see what the gaskets do. So now I'm just gonna, I do this by feel, right? There are a lot of things that they sell to gauge the tension at each lug, and I just try and do that with my hand, right? I'm trying to feel. I'm looking at the wrinkles on the snare head. It doesn't work exactly the same on batter heads, but I'm looking at the wrinkles, and I don't have the top head on here yet, right? And I'm kind of going in a star, kind of going a little random. If I hit one and it feels, I get more resistance than the next one. This one, right, still feels really loose, I bet you. Oh, no, it's starting to tighten up a little. So at this point, I'm pretty much just going by resistance and wrinkles. There's still some wrinkles on this one. snare side heads too, they don't tell you this. Well, lots of people tell you this, but not everyone knows this. Snare side heads, the bearing edge has a dip, right? They call that the snare bed. So the drum actually, the edge of the drum actually takes a little dip, so the snare wires can lie flatter on the bottom head. And that makes tuning snare heads, you know, I mean, I want it to sound, crispy with a teeny bit of tone and presence, but not a lot of pitch, right? And so I'm really going for things that I can do to make that sound, you know, not pitchy and ringy. And shockingly, I was worried that the heavier head would do that, but it really doesn't seem to have. I should also say I've only tried the medium head on a couple snare drums and not on like every last snare drum. So maybe I just happened to put it on the snare drums that it's going to work on, and it's not going to work on any other snare drums ever, right? That's totally, I mean, that seems silly, but it's certainly possible. Okay, and then I just, for snare wires, I don't think there's a super trick to it. I use the gross grain ribbon. It has a nice, it's got that grain, so it's got a texture, so it grabs in the butt and the strainer. And it's the quietest and most reliable that I've found. Honestly, there's nothing perfect for attaching your snares to the drum, in my experience. There's always something that that you wish the one thing would do that the other thing would do. Like plastic straps, I hate them, but they're the best at getting the snare wires away from the bottom head, right? Because they stay kind of stiff. So when you turn the strainer off, they almost push the snares down. Strings are nice because, or cord is nice because it's the lightest, you know, and technically has the least impact on the bottom head. But I go through snare wire and snare cord like nobody's business. Kind of doesn't matter which one I've tried. So I've been using the fabric for a few years, and it really seems the winner to me. Okay, so the way that I get my initial set on my snare wires is I back the strainer out all the way and I turn it on. This is another one. I haven't found like the perfect method yet. All right, and then I straighten it out and I pull it pretty taut. I'm not going to get it as tight as the strainer itself will. And I try and make sure I keep it centered. And then I just tighten it here. I like a moderately tight snare wire tension. And so this gives me enough play in the strainer to make that happen, usually. Not with every strainer, but with this Ludwig Atlas strainer, I'm able to make that happen. Okay, and now we're just going to put on the top head, and I'm going to oil the tension rods. And another thing I often do is wax the edge. Seems silly to me on a metal drum. One of the reasons to do it is to smooth the surface. I don't know how smooth I'm going to get a metal shell. The other thing is to add a little bit of lubrication, but the snare head. Nice fresh new Baron. This is totally an OCD thing. I like to have the logo where the strainer is. That goes back to drum core. where at least there was a reason, right? Doing everything you can to, you know, look uniform is a big part of the activity. And so, and then, you know, once you're in that habits are hard to break. This is the thing too. Even at the finger tight stage, I'll grab my drum key and I'm trying to match tension. The thing is, a lot of times, so the little insert part of the lug is called the nut. A lot of times, the nuts just aren't, or the tension rods themselves just aren't the same all the way around the drum. And so you're going to have differences of tension, especially at that finger tight stage. You know, when they're really loose, that's when that different tension is really going to show itself. So you just have to kind of feel it and compensate and trust your judgment and your experience. And it'll take a while, but after a while, you'll be amazed how you just kind of can follow it around. Another thing too, I am doing kind of the initial seating of this head. You don't know this because you're watching a video. It's 10, yeah, it's about 10 o'clock at night for me. This is going to get a real tuning tomorrow when I do some recording. The very first time I went into the studio as a fresh young lass, back when it was $20 an hour and we pooled our money, so that was a long time ago. I put on new heads, like pretty much right before we went into the studio, and the the toms sounded flat with no tone because they just stretched out the whole day. And I wasn't, you know, it was my first time in the studio. I was kind of overwhelmed, so I wasn't able to like process, oh hey, your toms are going flat, right? So ever since then, I've gotten a little bit, different brands need more seating than other brands. Attack is like, honestly, I've found them to be somewhere in the middle. The hoop is very resistant to pulling because it's that, they have a name. The plastic is wrapped around one piece of metal, and then that piece of metal is like grabbed by another piece of metal, right? So the whole thing is like this mad tight sandwich. The head ain't coming out, right? And so that means for seating, the seating process is a little quicker. The attack heads do stretch a little bit at first, and so I do still like to give that little bit of seat overnight, right? Just to feel more secure in that when I do the initial tuning. I am going to let you hear this just so we can see how it sounds. I'm going to, it's not going to be close mic'd, so because the snare mic is over there, you'll just have to deal with weird bleed and overheads. Another thing I'll do, so the head, this is a thing I don't think I've seen anyone talk about actually. The head is a vibrating membrane, right? 360 degrees, it's a circle. And it's held at however many tension points. This snare drum has 10 lugs, 10 tension rods, so 10 points of tension. I watched read a great article about a guy talking about how each pair of lugs is kind of creating a tension band across the head, which I liked that a lot. So theoretically, between each tension rod is, you know, the point where you're going to get the most weird stuff going on, because that's where it gets loose before the next tension rod. A thing I like to do a lot is, you know, when you do that little tappy, 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 and you're trying to get the tension rod, oh, is that one? I go around before I start making decisions. And then I'll go around again before I start, right? So I don't just go. it's pretty well in tune now. So of course I can't illustrate my point, but I don't just, if I get, tap, 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 I don't instantly go with that one tension rod because I want to see what's happening all around the drum, all around the surface, right? Makes a huge difference. If I tighten that one, it has an effect on the entire head. Maybe it's low, the pitch is low right here, but maybe it's not that tension rod's fault. Maybe it's this one's fault. Maybe it's these two. Maybe it's this whole side of the drum, right? And so if you just tap, tap and decide, oh, I'm going to change that one. Now you've changed over here without even listening to over here yet, right? So, like I say, tuning drums is, I swear to God, I'm not as obsessive as some people. I realize as I'm talking, I sound pretty obsessive. But the people that have heard tuned drums the best are the people who have just done it a million times and have incredible ears and incredible senses of tension, right? And they're all drum techs, right? And that's their calling, right? The people who really love drum tuning, there are jobs in drum tuning, and God bless those people, because, I don't hate it. I like it. It's fun, but I can't get too obsessed with it because it drives me nuts. But so that's a thing. Like I say, I haven't heard many people talk about that. Don't just start right away making decisions. Go all the way around before you start making decisions. I'm going to let you hear how this sounds now, and then I'm going to go to bed at some point tonight, and I will wake up tomorrow, and you will see very little difference. But I want you to know that there's going to be an overnight point where the drum head sits. I didn't, this is probably a little, that's another thing. I cranked the top head a little tighter than I like because I want to give it that chance to seat and stretch. The bottom head I didn't, because I put the same bottom head back on, same snares are back on. Let's see how it sounds. So I think I'm in love. I think I like this change. I need to do some listening to some recordings that I've made before. But I can still hear the ring of the shell, but it just shuts it down a little bit quicker. It's impressive because it doesn't sound like there's a blanket on the shell. It sounds like, or if there is, it sounds like it's a blanket that can kind of go, right? It almost sounds like there's a gate on the shell, which is, I like. And I swear that thicker snare head, that's thicker snare side head, no snare drum has sounded so like punch me in the chest as the ones that put the thicker snare side head on. So, by all means, I mean, I play a lot of ghost notes. I have found the medium bottom head has maybe dropped like a teeny bit of snare response off of my ghost notes. But most of the music I play is, the quietest it gets is probably mezzo forte, right? Maybe mezzo piano, but not much piano. And so, and if I do get called to play that music, like I say, I have some snares set up with other heads, but for hyperspace, for sex and witchcraft, for church, for the stuff that I do most of the time, the medium snare heads. If you haven't tried a 5mm snare side head, try it. I was exceedingly skeptical about the prospect, and when I got it, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Why haven't I used this all the time, right? So that's my recommendation to you. Give it a try. You might hate it, right? But if you haven't tried it, you don't know. You're just kind of going what people tell you. Everyone says, oh, it's less sensitive, and maybe, but everything that I've lost in sensitivity, which fine, I did lose. If I was playing brushes or like, 7A, jazz, right? Like fine, but I'm not, right? I'm playing more, like I say, medium soft at the softest to loud. And everything that I've lost from the sensitivity, I'm getting back in overkill, in the thwack, in the thunk, in the punch you in the chest kind of fullness. So try medium snare side heads. All right, the video is going to blur, and I'm going to see you tomorrow, and we'll do the finished tuning. All right, have a good night. Ha! So here I am the next day. It's been 16 or 18 hours since I left this drum. I'm going to do a final tuning now. I'm going to do the same thing that I was doing, just kind of tap around, hear what sounds good to me by both tension and ear, right? The snare drum is nice because I don't have to match it to anything else. I just need the snare drum to sound like I want it to sound. I'll probably flip it over and tackle the bottom head a little bit more today. I'm going to let you watch this process. So I'm going to talk you through the part where I'm tapping and tuning, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to turn the snares off. When I put my finger in the middle, what I'm doing is muting the fundamental pitch of the drum. So I'm muting that first node, right? That first point where the truest pitch of the drum is, but also this helps to separate the pitch of the top head from the bottom head, so I can kind of get a sense of, versus, you know, doing this versus this, right? I'm hearing the top head, and now I'm hearing the whole drum, right? And I want to hear, it's easier to do this if I'm hearing just the top head. Trick is you want to just touch and not press down, because if you press down, then you're messing with the tuning too. This feels pretty. It feels like it held its pitch pretty well overnight. Held its tuning to itself. Let's see where the bottom head. Well, that's a neat thing about these wires. Okay, so to tune the bottom head, you got to get the wires off the head, obviously. And this is the exact opposite of what I used to do. But it seems like what I've been going for lately is the 4 lugs on the 2 sides of the bearing edges are a little lower pitched than the other 6. If the drum only has 8 lugs than the other 4, right? But you get the idea. And it's shocking to me, that feels about that feels so low for where I used to have my snare heads, but that feels good as well. It does seem like the attack heads are doing better at holding their tuning on that initial seat than the heads I had been using, which is nice. It's a nice thing to feel like you can throw on a head and just use it right away, instead of feeling like, oh, I need to plan on, you know, changing heads before. That said, old habits die hard. I'm still probably going to do that for a little while until I feel a little bit more confident. Okay, so now I'll give you I'll give you the overheads on the snare, and then we'll put it on the stand and we'll see how that goes. I actually think I want to bring the top head up just a little bit from where it is. I like it. It feels a teeny bit tubby. And then once you have the pitch set and you have the head pretty well in tune with itself, going up or going down is a lot easier. You just kind of try and feel, but also, you know, that much quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter turn, quarter, all the way around, right? Right, so it's still pretty well in tune with itself. Did I mention I like this snare drum? So it's still a little on the low side. I'm really digging it though, so I'm gonna leave it there. Let me put it back on its stand and put its mic on, and then we'll do one last sound check just to see. So then we'll have something to compare it to. I can give you a before the little gaskets and see how that sounds. Okay, so back one last time. Now I've got the snare in its position with its mic on. I do think the other version, the other recording I have is going to have a different mic, so it's not going to be perfect one-to-one. Sorry. It's perfect. It's difficult to get perfect one-to-ones, even if you're using the same mics in the same room, blah, blah, blah. Different days, different, humidity in the air, but also different, if the mic is like that much of a different angle. Mic positioning is an underrated point of importance. But so I'll play it for you a little bit and then play maybe a groove, and then that'll wrap it up. I'll show you, here's some before footage, which again isn't going to be a perfect one-to-one in this case, but I'll try and find the best footage I can of how the old drum sounded, or how the drum sounded without the gaskets. And again, I'll see if I can find something with this mic, and let's check that out. Okay, and now here it is with the gaskets. My initial impression is that I like it better with the gaskets. It does feel a little drier, but still not dead. What did you all think? Was it better before? Was it better after? This is definitely a point of discussion amongst especially Ludwig snare aficionados. The general consensus seems to be the snares sound better without the gaskets, but I'm going for something kind of specific, and so it doesn't surprise me that I would go against the grain. That is my nature after all. So let me know what you think of the change down in the comments. If you like this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up. If you hate it, a thumbs down still works for the algorithm. Hey, it's all engagement, right? If you're not subscribed to the channel, I would appreciate you hitting that subscribe button. If you want to be notified when I make videos, hit the little notification bell. If you like what I do on this channel, I would appreciate if you considered joining my Patreon and becoming a patron. I'm trying to do at least one kind of major extra project for patrons a month. And as I get more used to the idea of having a Patreon, I will be doing other stuff over there as well. But that's going to be it for today. I will see you all again real soon. I love you all so much. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.